Hello and welcome to the Pixel Vault with Mbit Casino, your guide to the history of gaming. My name's Matt White and on today's episode we're going to be looking at the console wars. Let's go to the 1990s where some of these rivalries reached fever pitch. The 90s saw us with the SNES, the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. That was my console, absolutely adored it. Games like Mario World, Mario Kart, Street Fighter, it was a real family favourite console. However, Sega decided that they wanted to do something a little bit more edgy, a little bit more cooler, and they released the Mega Drive. This had games like Legend of Zelda, it had Sonic the Hedgehog, which has obviously gone on and on to be a real popular favourite around the world. This competition was absolutely fierce in the 1990s. Both consoles wanting to absolutely dominate the 16-bit market. Next up is the PlayStation versus the Nintendo 64. Mid to late 90s we're talking now, and this is when Sony first released the PlayStation, which absolutely raised the game. We're talking far superior 3D graphics, we're talking more mature games, things like Final Fantasy VII and Metal Gear Solid. Now, as good as this was, unfortunately, for the Sega fans, it's starting to begin the decline of the Sega. However, while all this was going on with Sony, Nintendo released the Nintendo 64, an incredible bit of kit. This was a cartridge-based console. It had games like Super Mario 64, which absolutely revolutionized the 3D platform games. And who could forget GoldenEye? Now, although it had some great games and it was a great console, unfortunately it just could not match PlayStation's library, and it also couldn't quite compete with the mature gaming audience that Sony had. Next up, and the next generation, it's the PlayStation 2 versus Xbox versus Gamecube. I think it's widely known that the PlayStation 2 became the biggest selling games console ever, with a huge library of games including two of my favourite, Gran Turismo 3 and Grand Theft Auto 3, and its success was also helped by the fact that it played DVDs, an absolute winner. PlayStation 2's rival at the time was Microsoft's Xbox, an absolute incredible bit of kit which introduced us for the first time to Halo, an amazing first-person shooter that came synonymous with the Xbox brand, and it also for the first time introduced us to online playing, which at the time absolutely blew people's minds. Now, running alongside these two big boys was the Nintendo Gamecube. Now, I had this, a purple brick, which I thought was incredible. There was great games like Super Smash Brothers, Luigi's Mansion, all good fun. And believe it or not, it was the most powerful console out of all three of these. However, despite that, it failed to match the commercial success of the two big boys. Now we're moving on to the mid-noughties, where something very distinct happened. Nintendo decided that they didn't want to be part of the console wars. They didn't want to compete anymore with the two big boys. So they moved off and did something called Blue Ocean Strategy and decided to do something very unique, all the while leaving PlayStation and Xbox to dominate the market. And let's not forget, this was around the time that social media was really having a moment. This allowed each console to have a platform where they could have digs at each other. And because it was public, it meant that the fan bases could join in as well, causing more heat within the console wars. And even at the E3 exhibitions, it meant that the owners of the consoles, when they were delivering their speeches and announcing what was coming up next, could have digs at each other. And at one stage, things got pretty heated when Xbox suggested that PlayStation were listening in secretly and illegally to your conversations. Fast forward to modern day, and that rivalry, without a doubt, is still there. But now they do play nicely together. Cross-platform play became a big thing, but PlayStation, they didn't want to know, whereas Xbox and Nintendo, they absolutely embraced it and used to have sly digs at PlayStation for not joining in. Eventually, the PlayStation crumbled due to fan pressure, and now they're involved. Games like Fortnite and the biggest selling game ever, Minecraft, they're all now cross-platform. So it goes to show that you can be rivals, but they can also play nicely. Is the rivalry still there? Do you still compete with your mates about what console's best? Let us know in the comments. Are you Nintendo, Xbox, PlayStation, or old school? Maybe you still play the Atari. Let us know below, and please do me a favor, like and subscribe.